this exciting episode, we've got amnesia, art, jewels, and international intrigue, plus a Ziva Rodan sighting, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a drill. It's Perry Mason, Season 5, Episode 19, The Case of the Glamorous Ghost. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose, pretty simple, provide an audio companion to every episode of television's greatest legal drama, Perry Mason. Each episode, we give you a summary of the plot. We even compare plots with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel if the episode was an adaptation. We give you a little trivia, reveal the episode's theme, then revel in a Perry proverb, that's a pearl of wisdom from the man himself, before we head to the water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of our fave legal cruise adventures. But first, say it with me, to the law library! Every episode we visit the law library in order to find legal precedents for future cases. For this episode, we're discussing customs informants and the lucrative but dangerous world of catching smugglers.
U.S. Customs pays a reward for information on smuggled goods.
Well, a professional informer is usually interested in a 20% reward.
The U.S. Customs Service, now part of Customs and Border Protection, has long maintained a program that would have made the decedent in this episode's case, Doug Hepner, light up. They pay rewards to eligible informants who provide original information about customs violations. In real life, these rewards could be up to 25% of the net amount recovered, with a maximum of $250,000 per case. But Doug and his partner Sadie made classic informant mistakes.
Well, a professional informer is usually interested in a 20% reward, but more than that, also interested in blackmail.
So instead of just collecting reward money, they dabbled in blackmail. And in 1962, Cali, that decision could land them both in state prison for 2 to 4 years with a hefty fine. But the real hammer would have fallen at the federal level, where because of the Hobbs Act of 1946, which deals with extortion affecting interstate or foreign commerce, each count of extortion could get you up to 20 years in prison. The Customs Informant Program continues today, though modern cases tend to focus more on drugs than the smuggled gems in today's episode. Now, let's get to the full plot of that episode. The Case of the Glamorous Ghost. We open with a spectacle, piano twinkling, a half-dressed woman with amnesia, and coppers out underneath the Sierra Vista Park moonlight.
May I have your name, please?
I don't know my name.
The next morning, Olga Corbin, sister of the Glamorous Ghost, storms into Perry's office with the morning papers and news that her sister Eleanor is pulling her favorite trick.
Eleanor is an exhibitionist and an opportunist. She's also a liar. Regardless of that story in the papers, she doesn't have any more amnesia than I do. Once before, she worked her way out of trouble by faking amnesia. Now she's in trouble again. More amnesia.
Perry delegates Paul to go get the dope on Eleanor, who can't account for the last 2 weeks.
Tell us about the accident and about Douglas Hepner.
Well, I remember that
we were going to be married, and we were driving to Yuma. And there was Doug's mother. He telephoned to tell her.
Where does Doug's mother live?
Salt Lake City,
But who we see is actually 28-year-old actress Mary Anders.
But the other day, when Douglas called me from Barstow, he was with another girl. A different girl named Suzanne, whom he also introduced to me on the phone. Just a moment. Mr. Drake, who are you? And why are you calling me?
I'm a private detective, and I...
Private detective? Well, why didn't you say so? I don't understand. Look here, if you have any more questions, you'd better ask them of Doug himself. Goodbye.
Soon, our favorite PI is neck deep in an investigation that involves Walter Ritchie, unctuous apartment desk clerk,
Mind if I left her a note?
You'll find paper and envelopes on the desk.
Eleanor Corbin's roommate, Ethel Balan, played by Gene Cooper.
Oh, so that's what sent you here. You traced the raincoat. Eleanor sent you?
Well, actually, we came to pick up Miss Corbin's things.
An international painter, Suzanne Granger, played by Israeli actress Ziva Rodan.
How do you know about that?
Doug's mother, Sadie Hepner, in Salt Lake City.
Among other things, his mother is why I am not his wife.
I gather you didn't approve of interrupting your Vegas elopement while Doug called mother.
No, I didn't. The way he discussed me on the telephone, my name, my address, where we were going, how long we'll be gone, even a description of my figure. I was wondering if he was planning a marriage or a purchase of some livestock from a country fair.
While Paul is talking up Suzanne, Doug Hepner's body is found in Sierra Vista Park, shot in the back of the head with Eleanor's gun. Yikes. The rare Trag and Anderson double team make the pronouncement.
Shot in the back of the head. Any identification, Andy?
Driver's license.
Hepner. Douglas Hepner.
Here's Berger's case against Eleanor.
We expect to show, Your Honor, that at the time of this crime, the defendant, Eleanor Corbin, was driven by possessiveness and jealousy. That under this motivation, she made arrangements to share an apartment with a woman named Ethel Balan for the sole purpose of spying on another woman named Suzanne Granger, whom she suspected of stealing the affection of the man she claimed was her husband. And so, Your Honor, we find Douglas Hepner dead with a bullet in his brain, a bullet from this defendant's own gun.
But Perry sees what's off. Hepner's pockets were suspiciously empty for a man about town.
Your Honor, the decedent, at the time his body was discovered, had no matches, no lighter, no knife, nothing in his possession that could start a fire or cut through bonds.
Then Eleanor spills the beans.
Were you running around the park that night half-dressed, and if so, why?
Mr. Mason, I was appealing for help. I was trying to get somebody to follow me.
Why did you want someone to follow you?
Because I wanted to lead them to where they could find Doug's body.
You knew his body was there? You knew he was dead?
Yes. Doug and I were working on something very important. And every time we met, well, we got together there in the park. So when I went there this night, Doug was lying there dead. And my gun was right beside him.
Perry tracks down the missing Sadie Hepner and ends up exposing an international gem smuggling operation. Ethel and Walter Ritchie, Jacques!
From where was Douglas Hepner calling?
From the apartment of the other person he had suspected. Ethel Balan.
No. No, that's a lie.
But I didn't kill him. I swear it, I didn't kill him.
But your accomplice did. The person who headed the smuggling ring did. Walter Ritchie did.
All's well that ends well, I suppose. Paul gets a paycheck. Use that word, Paul.
Hey, this is a small fortune. You sure you haven't made some mistake? This must be your fee.
No, Paul? Without the work you did, Eleanor Corbin might very well have been convicted of murder and on her way to the gas chamber.
Wow. Us plutocrats.
Plutocrat Paul. Della gets paid, too.
However, the Customs Service is paying you the 20% reward for finding those smuggled gems.
You're kidding.
Yeah, it's right here.
What do you know?
Small change. Come along, gentlemen. I'll buy the dinner.
Bonus bucks. For the second time this season, we've got an episode adapted from an Earl Stanley Gardner novel. This one from the 1955 novel of the same name, The Case of the Glamorous Ghost. Let's explore the differences. First, Olga is Eleanor's stepsister, not her sister, and that's an explanation for a lot of her animus. Second, of course, it is Perry, not Paul, who conducts most of the investigation. Third, Suzanne Granger's character is an art critic working on a book about Renaissance masters, not a painter. Fourth, we get a far clearer resolution in the TV version. Walter Ritchie is our murderer. In the novel, well, Webley, Ritchie, and Ethel Balan are responsible, but we never find out who pulled the trigger. Fifth, and perhaps the biggest change, is in the nature of Sadie and Doug's relationship. In the episode, of course, they are secretly married. In the novel, they're romantic partners, but not legally wed. In fact, Perry uses the customs reward as leverage to get Sadie to testify. So Della in the novel is not going to walk away with a payday. And of course, Paul's not either, because in the novel, Paul didn't do the work that earned him the payday in the episode. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is a deep dive on an actor or actress who guest starred in the episode. And finally, a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul prompt for this episode involves wholesale jewelers like Homer Corbin. You know, guys whose word is as good as their bond.
Dad's in the wholesale jewelry business. He specializes in diamonds. He's a man whose word is as good as a written contract. A family scandal could crush him.
For this prompt, I ask, do such jewelers still exist? Are there any Homer Corbins among us? Tell us what you find, Pauls. Our Della for this episode could focus on no one other than the fascinating Ziva Rodan, a.k.a. Suzanne Granger.
I have another good reason to remember it. While I was out of town, someone broke into my apartment and acts of vandalism were committed.
There was a lot of good material on Ziva that I didn't want to waste. There was too little corroboration on much of her life after the 1950s and 60s for me to make an intelligible list of 10 facts that took her from birth to death. So, I'm going to read you some of the news stories and book excerpts I found. The first one comes from the Canadian Jewish Chronicle. Ziva Shapir, who recently arrived in Hollywood, is the first Israeli actress to be signed to a long-term deal with a major motion picture studio. Now, for reasons I can't explain, just take it that Shapir is definitely Ziva Rodan. Under contract to Universal International Pictures, the sultry beauty is making her American screen debut on a loan out to Bel Air Productions in Pharaoh's Curse, a medium-budgeted opus currently before the camera and scheduled for release by United Artists. Shapir, whose real name is Ziva Blackman, is a brown-eyed 21-year-old Sabra, which means someone who is Jewish and born in Israel, with a face very much like Ava Gardner's. Born in Haifa, the daughter of a mathematics professor, she first went to the U.S. in 1948 to enter Kirkwood High School in St. Louis. Her professional career is a fabulous success story. Deeply interested in the stage, she joined the Habamah upon her return to the Holy Land. Immediately after graduation, she was fortunate enough to appear in some of the group's greatest productions, and later she switched to the Chamber Theater, where she played important leads before she was 20. Sandwiched in between Ziva's professional work has been a 2-year hitch in the Israeli army, where she served in a fighting formation. Now, here's an excerpt from a book called Henry and Friends about the friends of scandalous novelist Henry Miller. This short chapter is called Viva Ziva. Henry's life was never humdrum. He was constantly meeting new people, finding new causes to champion, getting new fixes on the universe. But the arrival on the scene of Ziva Rodan was something special. Henry's clowning rarely had a partner to ride the seesaw, but here she was, and a gorgeous female at that. Henry was in clown heaven, and when I dropped by to make photographs, I found myself caught up in the somersaults. Henry explained that Ziva had acted in some movie of questionable value, was a Sabra, and had been in the Israeli army, and that I was being drawn in to do some glamour shots for a model portfolio. We never got around to that. Ziva's penchant for horseplay brought us to the edge of the pool, doing a cockeyed rendition of Leda and Swan. Henry scrawled in big letters on his graffiti wall, Viva Ziva. And in his letter to this author, Henry Miller wrote, maybe you'd be willing to take some photos of a friend of mine, an Israeli actress, Ziva Rodan, would you? She thinks if she had some breathtaking photos of herself, she could get them placed in a magazine and thus arouse a little tension. Not hard to look at, very vivacious. Think you'll like her. I like her too. This is from a story called Miss Shapir Explains Israel. Ziva Shapir is a Sabra, a very pretty Sabra too. A Sabra, she explains, is a native-born Israeli. It is the Hebrew word for cactus, which, like our people, must be tough on the outside to endure, but remain sweet inside. Israel has 3 wonderful crops, she said, children, oranges, and wine. We have 22 kinds of wine, including champagne. Now, the reason she's bringing this up is in the early 50s, she was actually named Queen of the Wine Festival, which won her a 6-week trip to the U.S., where she toured the Eastern Seaboard, trying to improve her command of the English language as she visited the country and hawked Israeli wines in America. One more here, just one more for the road, okay? Cary Grant. This is a bio of Cary Grant. Cary was mentioned frequently in the columns because of his alleged relationship with the actress Ziva Rodan. He was supposed to have given Miss Rodan a bracelet inscribed to Ziva, the only one who really knew. Love, Cary. Knew what? Several reporters asked Miss Rodan. She replied, it's an inside joke strictly between Cary and me. It wouldn't make sense to anyone else. Seriously, there's... what a life. I don't know what else to say. Our Perry for this episode involves 2 curious moments that show a different side of our intrepid hero. First, Perry asks Paul to empty his pockets rather than doing it himself. Was he trying to make a point about detectives and their pack rat habits?
What have you got in your pockets, Paul?
Just a bunch of junk.
Put it all out here on the table, will you?
Then, in a rare moment of thriftiness, Perry makes no gesture to dissuade Paul or Della from paying for the celebratory post-case meal. Way to go, Perry! Let someone else pick up the check for once. Now, let's explore the episode's theme, which is embarrassment. Eleanor Corbin. Part of my problem with this episode is that from everything Olga says, Eleanor is supposed to be an exhibitionist, but God bless actress Mary Murphy, she plays the role as an embarrassed school marm. Then we have Olga, whose every action is driven by the need to protect Daddy Dearest from embarrassment. This is a non-starter too. We never get back to Daddy Warbucks Corbin in the course of the trial, though he kicks in the cash for Paul's payday in absentia, so what has he got to hide? But embarrassment really comes into play with Walter Ritchie. Perry catches him on this fact. In Perry Mason's world, when people go to extraordinary lengths to avoid shame, they usually have something bigger to hide. Now it's time for a Perry proverb. When Eleanor finally breaks down and confesses and tells her convoluted story to Perry, he assesses it with precision.
If you were ever put on a witness stand and tried to tell a jury what you've just told me, I guarantee you'd be convicted of first-degree murder.
Yikes. No general reassurance here, folks. No, we'll figure this out together. Just cold hard truth from our favorite attorney. And you know what? It's what Eleanor needed to hear. The truth might hurt, but a lie will kill you. Now it's time for a swig from the water cooler.
You know, there is one thing I don't understand. Go on, Paul.
Every time we visit the water cooler, we give you deleted scenes, bits that didn't quite make the episode's final cut. Number 1, Sadie Hepner busts out various voices. Of course, there's Granny Sadie, but she's also got a killer Mae West, and she even does Walter Brennan. Number 2, the customs boys discover something was up with Suzanne Granger when they take a closer look at the colors of her paint. Cadmium yellow, burnt sienna, smuggled sapphire blue. Wait a minute! And finally, Paul tests out his own amnesia act after Perry waits for him to pick up the dinner bill. What? What check? What year is it? Who's president? Who are you? Why am I here? In our Paul prompts from the last episode, The Case of the Tarnished Trademark, we asked our Pauls to find a real model for the episode's Danish community run by Axel Norstad. And my PI was on the case. She located Solvang, a charming Danish-inspired community located in the Santa Ynez Valley of Cali, 45 minutes northwest of Santa Barbara. Founded in 1911 by Danish-American immigrants from the Midwest, the word Solvang means sunny field, and the city has become known as, quote, the Danish capital of America. Not too shabby. Boom. We also asked, who are the real Danish Axel Norstads out there making quality furniture for an affordable price? Dad Drake did some sleuthing and came up with one. Fritz Hansen, founded 1872, Denmark's most prestigious furniture manufacturer. 2, Carl Hansen and Son, with that distinctive Danish line through the O of son, produced classics like the Wishbone chair. 3, Hey, founded 2002, creates minimalist furniture for everyday use. 4, Beau Concept, known for customizable furniture designs. And 5, Muto, mixing traditional materials and modern design. Thanks, Pauls! As always, I'd love to hear from you. Do you have a comment on the episode or the pod in general? Why don't you drop me a line at theperrypod@gmail.com. Next time, we've got corporate intrigue, family betrayal, a deadly game of I've Got a Secret, when a young girl's innocent letters to her pen pal unleash a storm of violence at Gregson Canneries. Someone's leaking merger plans. Perry's caught in the middle of this family food fight. Join us for The Case of the Poison Pen Pal, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat.